Hulk Hogan's greatest matches and moments, ranked from iconic to insane. A 12-time world champion across WWE and WCW, and arguably the most recognizable face in wrestling history, Hogan wasn't just a superstar, he was wrestling for an entire generation. His legacy is etched into the very fabric of sports entertainment. The bandana, the mustache, the poses, the leg drop. From main-eventing WrestleMania to jump-starting the NWO, Hulk Hogan helped build the empire that wrestling stands on today. But how do you define the in-ring legacy of someone so larger than life? These are 7 unforgettable matches and moments that helped shape Hulk Hogan's legendary career. Bouts that electrified arenas, changed wrestling history, and turned a man into an icon. 7. The Ultimate Challenge, April 1, 1990. Toronto Skydome, on the grandest stage of them all, Hulk Hogan faced off against another fan-favorite powerhouse, the Ultimate Warrior. WWE Champion versus Intercontinental Champion, title versus title. It wasn't just a match, it was a passing of the torch. Or at least, the attempted passing. In one of the most iconic main events of all time, Hogan put his legacy on the line in a clash that defined an era. This wasn't just two titans colliding. It was the moment that proved Hulkamania could be challenged, even if only briefly. Coming into the match, few expected much. Both men were known more for their star power than wrestling technique, and with both playing heroic roles, the usual clear-cut good versus bad dynamic was missing. Yet far from being a lackluster contest, Hogan skillfully directing the pace and storytelling of the bout. The crowd was captivated, caught up in the suspense of which WWE legend would leave the ring holding both championships. In the closing moments, Hogan went for his signature leg drop, but Warrior narrowly avoided it and countered with a powerful splash. Within seconds, it felt like a new chapter had begun. Hogan passed the title to Warrior and appeared to bow out gracefully, signaling a shift in the company's hierarchy and the rise of a new champion. What actually happened tells a different story. Nevertheless, Hogan's performance that night was exceptional, a true showcase of his underrated talent and in-ring intelligence. 6. The Mega Powers Fall Apart, 2 of 7. For a full year, WWE fans were captivated by the alliance between Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage. Together, the Mega Powers stood as the company's top duo, taking on formidable foes like Ted DiBiase, Andre the Giant, Big Boss Man, and Akeem. They not only won matches as a team but also enjoyed individual successes, becoming two of the most beloved figures in wrestling. However, tension simmered beneath the surface, fueled by Savage's growing jealousy over Hogan's close bond with Savage's manager, Miss Elizabeth. This uneasy dynamic reached its breaking point during the main event on February 3, 1989, when betrayal shattered their partnership. Once united, Hogan and Savage became bitter rivals, culminating in a highly anticipated showdown at WrestleMania 5 in Atlantic City, a rivalry etched in wrestling history. A high-octane matchup that saw Miss Elizabeth's loyalties torn and Hogan bloodied by his menacing opponent, the contest served as the perfect conclusion to one of the greatest team partnerships ever produced by WWE. The challenger overcame his Crimson Mask to battle back and defeat Savage, much to the delight of his fans. Hogan, a master storyteller in front of cameras and a live audience, had a way of captivating the audience through facial expressions and body language. That tool was on full display in this era-defining story and blow-off match. 5. Hulkamania arrives in WCW 3 of 7. Hulkamania was not the unstoppable force it had been at its height by the time the mid-1990s rolled around. However, it still carried considerable weight in the industry. In 1994, with feelings hurt on both sides, Hogan and WWE severed ties. Eric Bischoff, the new senior vice president of WCW, saw an opportunity to boost his company's stature in the business by convincing Hogan to sign a coveted contract. He did, and Hogan arrived in grand fashion, with his superstar status reflected in a parade that ushered in a new era for the promotion. By the time he was booked to battle Ric Flair in the main event of Bash at the Beach, complete with star-studded appearances by Mr. T, Muhammad Ali, and Shaquille O'Neal, it was clear Hogan's arrival had changed the landscape of pro wrestling for the second time in his career. 4. Hulkamania runs wild, 4 of 7. The history of professional wrestling was forever changed on January 23, 1984, when Hulk Hogan defeated the Iron Sheik to win the WWF Championship and assume his spot atop Vince McMahon's promotion. A star who built momentum for himself in Verne Gagne's AWA but benefited from the marketing machine of McMahon's rapidly expanding company, Hogan was solidified as the face of the promotion and the star who would guide it to its greatest success. The wrestling boom of the 1980s, though already in motion, received the shot of adrenaline it needed to catapult it into another stratosphere by way of the first of Hogan's 6 WWE championships. 3. Icon vs. Icon 5 of 7. Hogan's return to WWE in 2002 was met with uncertainty amid horror stories about his massive power plays in WCW, and a wrestling presence quality that had dipped significantly. He was still an enormous star, and recognizable well beyond the confines of the pro wrestling business though, so it was no surprise Vince McMahon took a chance on Hogan's ability to show out on the grandest stage when he booked his greatest star of a bygone era against one of his biggest of the Attitude Era, The Rock, at WrestleMania X8. That decision paid off as Hogan and Rock captivated fans at the Sky Dome in Toronto. Fans gave Hogan a hero's welcome, eager to see him back in the ring and decidedly favoring him over the Great One. In return, he turned back the clock and reminded that audience of why they fell in love with him in the first place. Hogan lost, but there was no bigger winner at that year's Mania than the Hulkster, who rode the wave of popularity to renewed interest and one last championship push. 2. New World Order 6 of 7. Hogan's heel turn rocked the foundation of wrestling as fans knew it. For 12 years, he had been a hero to the masses. He influenced a generation of fans to say their prayers, take their vitamins, and hit the gym. He preached Hulkamania and vanquished the worst villains the pro wrestling industry had seen. That formula had grown old, and by the later half of the 1990s, fans demanded more. They booed the red and yellow, rooted against their childhood hero, and wanted cooler, edgier wrestling. Then enters the New World Order. Kevin Nash and Scott Hall made the jump from WWE, and they needed one more earth-shattering heel turn to really make the formation of the faction memorable. On July 7, 1996, at WCW Bash at the Beach, Hogan marched to the ring in what appeared to be an attempt to clear the outsiders from the squared circle and save the day as he had so many times in his career. However, no one foresaw the leg drop to Savage that announced Hogan's turn to the dark side, nor the venomous promo that followed and concluded with him telling his most faithful supporters to stick it. It was an unforgettable moment, and one that kicked off an 83-week reign of pro wrestling supremacy for WCW, not to mention a much-needed reinvention of the Hogan persona. 1. Hogan vs. Andre, 7 of 7. Hogan was the unquestioned face of professional wrestling by 1987. He had been world champion of WWE for over 3 years, and he was biggest star the industry had seen since Gorgeous George first invaded homes with the advent of the television 3 decades earlier. The only star who realistically rivaled his popularity was Andre the Giant, a larger-than-life icon who had transcended the industry in appearances on television and the movie. The $6 Million Man. The Princess Bride. Looking to bridge the gap between the days of regional territories, during which Andre was one of the kings, McMahon booked the Hulkster to defend his title against the newly heel Eighth Wonder of the World, in a blockbuster main event. With 93,073 fans packed into the Pontiac Silverdome in Detroit, Hogan overcame a match-long onslaught by his larger, more powerful opponent and delivered the most meaningful body slam of his career, en route to a big leg drop and a successful WWE Championship retention. Contrary to the longtime assertion the win was a passing of the torch moment, thanks mostly to the fact that Hogan was already a bigger star than Andre at that point, the victory reaffirmed the Hulkster's status as the biggest star in the industry and gave him a defining win over one of the few stars on par with his own celebrity.